Welcome. My name is William J. Rothwell. My friends call me Bill. You can call me Bill. And this video is recorded for my colleagues at NOCTI. And during the video, I would like to talk briefly about what is a job, what is a task, what is job analysis, what is task analysis. So let me get right to it and talk about those topics. First of all, what is a job? A job is a related group of duties and activities. Now, that sounds pretty general. Where do we get jobs from? What's the theory behind a job? Well, basically, the theory starts with the organizational structure. So when we found an organization, we have to have some breakdown of work duties for the entire organization to achieve its purpose, its mission. And so that leads to a structure, an organization chart of different components of the organization to achieve its strategic goals, its measurable strategic goals. So we don't just come up with a job at random and toss it into an organization. Instead, a job is logically related to some work activities of the organization. Traditionally, job descriptions have been criticized on many levels. The first complaint about job descriptions, and of course a typical job description begins with a 1 to 2 sentence description of the purpose of the job, and then a description of who the job reports to on the organization chart, and a description of who reports to that job incumbent, the job holder. And then there is a list of representative duties or activities. And then finally, there is the job specification. And the job description is the big part. The job specification is the part that indicates at the very end of the job description what is required in order to qualify to be considered for that job. So the job specification typically talks about education, experience, and other qualifications such as necessary licensure or certifications for the job. And these days we sometimes add in other desirable characteristics. Things like the ability to work on a team, the ability to demonstrate effective interpersonal skills, and other things. Those typically go in the job specification component. Job descriptions are pretty well described on ONET, the Occupational Information Network published by the U.S. government, which is slowly taking the place of an older resource called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, which is still found on the web and is still a useful tool. That provides 12,272 job descriptions written by the U.S. government, and they list out the duties and activities representative of a specific job category, such as, say, accountant, or another job such as general manager. So over 12,000 job descriptions have already been written in the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, and resources relevant to those can be found on the ONET, the Occupational Information Network. What's useful to know about the ONET or the Dictionary of Occupational Titles is that there's a code book attached that breaks down every job based on the knowledge, skills, attitudes, education, experience, tools, and other resources needed to perform the job. That's very useful. But be careful, because jobs are not the same across different organizations. So this leads to a common point of confusion, which is the difference between a job and a position. A position is a unique type of job. I'll give you an example. So secretary could be a job. That's a common category that extends across potentially an entire organization. But we all know that the secretary of the CEO is probably going to have slightly different work activities and duties than the secretary to the plant manager. And so a position indicates the unique duties and activities relevant to a specific position on the organization chart, such as secretary to the CEO. So this leads to some confusion. People think, well, why can't you have both? And obviously, it's the difference between the general and the specific. A job is general. A position is specific on the organization chart. So that brings us to the issue of tasks. A task is a discrete activity within the job. And so it has a definable beginning, middle, and end. And often activities are thought of as a process. So for example, it might list on a job description that a secretary's job requires typing letters. That would be a representative activity. But what is involved in typing? Who does it? When do they do it? Exactly how do they do it, step by step? How do we measure it? This gets down to the task level. So when we do job analysis, we're analyzing the job category, the general job like secretary, accountant, hourly worker on the assembly line, whatever particular job it is that we are looking at. And we indicate the activities that people perform, but those activities are relatively general and need to be made more specific, and that's where tasks come in. An activity is usually made up of a group of tasks. So there are many ways to do task analysis, and there are also many ways to do job analysis. So the simplest way to do a job analysis is to take an existing job description and update it. The research on that is not very comforting, because the research says that there's a 50% difference of opinion between what the manager thinks is important in a job and what the experienced job incumbent believes is important in the same job. So the right way to do a job description is to bring all the key stakeholders together and have someone, perhaps someone in HR or a NACHI consultant, interview the manager. Well, exactly what should people do in this job? Give us as many examples of duties or activities as you can give us, and the manager gives that list. And then we do the same thing with a group of representative, experienced employees, and we end up with two lists, one provided by the manager and one provided by the job incumbent. But what we'll discover is that they're not identical, that the manager will have thought of things that he or she can observe and probably regards as important, and the experienced workers will identify what they think of and what they believe to be important. So job descriptions have been criticized on many levels. One is that they are not output-based. They do not give us a description of the work results. For example, a work result of typing would be a typed product, such as a letter or a report. But it doesn't say that on the job description. It might just say the activity is typing. We don't know typing what, typing how often, at what level of accuracy. So to know that, we have to go to the next level down to task analysis. Now, according to this book, which I'll mention, I still believe this book is the classic in the field of task analysis, the Handbook of Task Analysis Procedures. It lists 40 different ways that we could conduct task analysis. Well, my heaven, why would we want 40 different methods to do it? Simple. It's all about why are we doing a task analysis? Why do we want a task analysis? So one reason we might want a task analysis is to break down the tasks in a procedure so that we know exactly, step by step, how the work is performed. So that would be one reason for a task analysis. Another is to do an analysis of what the learner needs to learn in order to do that task, in order to perform that element of the job. So that will require a different approach, because what people need to learn first may be different from the way the job is organized in terms of sequence of activities in the job. I'm not sure, I hope I'm being clear, but this is the difference between a job, a position, and a task. So when we get to the task analysis level, there are many ways we could go about that, but one way is to break it down by the actions performed and the results achieved. So who does what with what result, and what does that lead to? So we could think of a sheet of paper broken down with all of the who, what, when, where, why, how much questions, and then we could start populating those by observing workers, or by interviewing workers, or by doing focus groups, or by having workers fill out task diaries where they indicate exactly how they perform the job. But that will give us the sequence, but it may not give us what you need to learn first. You know, you probably remember from your college days the idea of prerequisites. A prerequisite is something you must know before you are taught something else. Before we teach a child mathematics, for example, arithmetic, we have to teach them what numbers mean. So learning the numbers, 1 to 10 or higher than that, is important before we start teaching a child how to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So the same principle applies to task analysis. We have to ask first the question, why are we doing the task analysis? And based on the answer to that question, we can then select the best approach.